Well, there's the bottle, and you can see the light hits it in different ways. So this is my subject matter for this drawing, and here we go. The bottle that I'm going to do is a Miller Lite bottle. I'm going to show you the real simplicity of drawing a beer bottle, and it is really incredibly simple. So I start with, I kind of look at a cylinder, right? There's a long cylinder here, and the cylinder has a smaller top than it does bottom. So if you're looking at a bottle from above, the bottle itself is going to have a long appearance to it, and I like to try to sketch what the bottle is, full shape. And if I can get the full shape in place, like I know that it's going to be skinnier at the top, and this oval at the top is going to be less pronounced, and then it comes out to a kind of a, it's got a little bit of a bevel to it. And I'm doing a lot of this from memory. I've had a lot of time with bottles, so I can tell you what they kind of look like. So that is the general feel for the bottle, and it gets a little bit skinnier as it comes down here. If we were going to draw a perspective of a bottle, upside down perspective, it would actually look like this. It would be really wide at the top, and it would go down at the bottom, and then it would kind of get skinny at the bottom, and then get wider up here, and this would be the top of the bottle. And if you were looking at this in perspective, you can see what I'm saying. It's you're looking down into the bottle, way down, like into it. So we're going to do it from just in front of it. Little bit of an angle, just a small angle. But here's the part that I think is very, very, very important. When you're drawing something like a cylinder, and let's say you're looking at it from an upper point of view, you're looking down on it. If you're looking down on it, look like this. If you were looking up on it, it would look like this. It would go into like a real small top, but the bottom would be super big if we were looking under the table looking up at it. So if you notice, the perspective obviously changes a lot. Like this might be a bottle laying on a table in front of you. You see how it's got the bottom here, and you're looking up at it. This one you're looking down at it. But if you're looking up at it, do you see how it goes away from you? And then the top of the bottle, clear up here, is round, and there's a little bit of a bevel there to it. So if you're looking at the bottom of the bottle, and there's the labels up, that's one way of appearance. This is another way. I'm in between. I'm kind of like right here in the middle. So I'm looking at the bottle from a good side angle. There's not a lot of depth change to the angles, but if you notice this top oval, which is the opening of the bottle, and you come down to the bottom oval, not only is it bigger, it's just more of a view going into it, because we're looking at it from a perspective where it actually kind of stretches out a little bit further. So you have more of an oval down here, and if we were going to put beer in it, the beer would be, the oval would change. This is the perspective plane. So let's say there's that much beer in it, you can see it. Or if there's this much beer in it, you can see it. Or if it's all the way up here at the top, it's almost straight across at some point in time. But since the bottle is, in front of us, we're not seeing too much into the bottom, but we're seeing a little bit more down here. So I wanted to kind of show that all of that is part of the bottle itself. And if you just kind of use these different angles, these ovals, to help you understand that the depth of the bottle is one thing, the width of the bottle is another, but more importantly than anything, it's about the perspective. The perspective of the bottle is where we're going to be looking at this, and I think it's one of the most important parts of illustration and drawing. As you see, I just kind of sketched there beside. I'll take these guys out of the way so that they're not annoying us, but I wanted to show you the dimension, the difference in the direction as to what we're talking about here. So if we wanted to now, let's say we're looking at, we talked briefly, it's a Miller Lite bottle. We kind of know it is. So no big surprise here. I'm going to have Miller on the side here. Now I believe that you can use photographic reference, you can use live action reference. In other words, like if you're doing fruit setting, you can actually have fruits in front of you. you can use a photograph. A photograph is replicating someone else's composition, but that is very helpful for you to learn different things. But we are looking primarily today at this because I want to show you the glass texture. Glass texture is very, very important. And if we were to kind of break down the elements of a bottle that we're looking at, you've got some paper, you've got some glass, and then the glass has textures to it. But the biggest part about a bottle is that the glass actually reflects the environment around it. So as I'm drawing this, I'm just getting the shape. So now I've got the shape, I've got where the labels are going to go. I may want to throw in here that I'm going to throw in the Miller logo, and we will kind of put that on to the side here, just so that it's enough that we can see what the name is that's on there, because it's really not important to have exactly the logo, but what is important is to know that you're following a path of the bottle. The glass is round. It is absolutely round. So you're actually drawing into the edge of a bottle. So I'm just sketching the logo in here because I want to have or kind of the feeling of their logo, so you might recognize it if you are a beer drinker. And the most important thing about doing a logo or a font or anything of that sort is consistency. I've got a whole nother video on consistency of calligraphy, and it really does make a difference, because if you're drawing something and you can keep the same feeling for each one of these letters, it is amazing how many fonts you can actually do. And keeping all of those the same height, the same width, everything that you can about this is really, really, really important, because it allows you to feel like you've just kind of finished their logo form. Let's put the registered trademark over here. And the cool thing is, if you're practicing with this, once you do this, you'll be able to draw the Miller logo from memory. I mean, anytime you're just sitting around, you could draw it. Not that you'd want to, but if you're ever at Miller corporate offices, sure, sketch them out something on a napkin and they'll go, hey, that's cool. And there is a lot of text on the label, and if you notice, I'm scribbling here. I'm really not doing much more than scribbling. And in the early days when I used to do ad layout, this was called Greeking. You would just do mock letters, and they really didn't look like anything. Sometimes it was just scribbling. A lot of times it was just random letters. Nowadays you see it when you're doing page layouts, called lorem ipsum. Lorem ipsum is just because it's a series of letters that repeats over and over and fills in copy. I'm just calling this Greeking because the Greeking itself is basically put letters in place where you think they're going to be, and then let them fill in the rest. The mind will look at that and you go, oh, that's a Miller label, especially if we add all of the details to the Miller label, which, you know, there's a bar at the top, a gold bar, and then a second gold bar, and that gold bar is a little bit wider at the top than the bottom one is, and there is none at the bottom. So that kind of gives you the Miller feeling of the bottle. So now we know we've got a Miller bottle going on. Down here at the rest of this, there's a whole nother thing. Now, I like to start from the top and come down to the bottom. And the reason I do that is because if my hand's going to smudge anything, I'll smear the text. So oftentimes what I'll do is I'll take a full other piece of paper and I will fold it and have that piece of paper as a blocker, so that I'm not dragging my hand across things. So let's go ahead and start to build this bottle in here. Now, I'm doing a lot of this from memory, but I've got a bottle in front of me. And it's better to have a bottle in front of me than a frontal lobotomy. That was a dumb joke. But anyway, this is what I wanted to show you. As we look at the bottle has distinct characteristics of what's around it. Whether it's lights or reflection, it's all reflecting a whole story around it. So if you look at it that way, you'll be able to start to add all the details. Now, I'm immediately going to a darker lead. I'm going to a B lead. That was a 2H that I was using before. But the B is here. allows me to get much, much darker. And a bottle, although it's completely dark, really reflects a lot around it. So if you look at it that way, you're basically drawing what's in the room around this bottle. And the outside of this bottle is reflecting a lot of the darkness. And if you've ever had a Miller Lite, you know that it's a twist off. So the twist is actually going up the bottle itself. So I'm just kind of starting it here, and then in the bottle, inside the bottle, it's pretty dark, especially up here. Now look really close and you'll notice I'm not going to the edge of the bottle. There is a white rim, not white, but a reflective rim that is on that bottle as well. And that reflective rim, you want to leave it so that it at least shows that a part of the bottle is up above there. So got that. Start filling this in, and this is where I think it starts to get cool. If you think of every piece of that item that you're drawing, now whether it's a beer mug or a coffee cup or a flower vase, whatever you'd call it, whatever it is, you know that it's telling the story that's around it. So let those reflections start to show. And as they show, kind of look at your real life item, the vase, the bottle, and you'll start to see as you get closer to them, there's so many different characteristics, especially in glass, that you could just kind of go on forever looking at the different colors that are involved. But we're doing this in black and white on purpose because I want you to kind of feel the glass itself. Now what I'm doing is, this is really neat. If you notice this dark band here, the dark band is going to continue all the way down one side. And the dark band itself is kind of a indicator of something behind it that might be dark. And if you get into it, you'll notice that it gets wider as the bottle gets wider itself. So this carries on with that. And we're going to continue that darkness all the way through here. And let it be great contrast too, because glass doesn't have many soft spots to it. It's got a lot of really, really brash areas. And I'm letting this light reflect off the edge of this bottle here because I see it in the one I'm looking at. And if you notice up above, I've got a little bit of a soft shadow going in here, and then it comes down, and like I said, it gets bigger all the way around here. Now here's the thing too, when you're looking at a live bottle, you can move around and let the light move around. If you're looking at a photograph, you're going to be reproducing what someone else has already done, but you can kind of see, you know, there'll be beads of sweat on it and things because the photographs that are done for live things are completely different than what I'd be doing here. But in mine, I noticed that there's some characteristics to the bottle that after the bend happens, which is clear up here, after this bend happens, there's a little bit of a rim around here that I really never saw before, right before I get to the label. So that rim, I want to make sure that I kind of incorporate that into the shading. So I'm going to take off this blurry part here, and we will continue to work that edge because, again, there's the outside of the bottle, and here's that edge that's happening. It's just a slight edge, just a slight edge. So I'm going to let it sort of show that there is a crease along this part of the bottle, and let this crease come around all the way through here. And anytime I bring a shadow down, like I'm going to have a shadow here that's going to show off the top of the bottle too. And we will go ahead and bring some darkness over here. Now this whole side is dark on this one. But like I said, I like to work from the top to the bottom because I pull towards me, and I don't, now I'm right-handed, so I'm going to go this way with my drawing. So as long as I'm going that way, I can actually continue from that side going down this way. I'll add other details later. But you'll notice too, like I said, there's sometimes there's characteristics that are around you from the room. Now I see a slight reflection happening in mine, and that is happening because there's a window nearby, and that is a kind of a light spot that's on there. And then there's another one down here that's reflecting. So if you notice, I'm kind of outlining the shadows. I'm outlining where I'm going to put the shadows. And that in itself allows me to start to see where these shadows hit and where they miss. And this in itself is the light part. This is the dark part. So I'm going to be going in and adding darkness to these, and I know that there's more down here. A little darkness coming here. So watch as it develops, because you start to notice that since you're following the contour of the bottle, it allows you to manipulate those shadows as you're drawing them. And I take them in a little bit closer, and we got a couple of things here that happen. So I know there's a lot of light play going on here, so we're just going to keep filling this in. And the more harsh you are on the shadows, the better the bottle looks as it's characteristic of glass. And it's kind of cool because at some point in time, you actually want the light to play on this as much as possible so that it feels that you have a dark bottle that's got reflections going on it. So we'll let that start to develop there. And as I come into the corner of this bottle over here, now this label is sort of flat on the bottle itself, so it's not really, it's not raised off there, so I don't want it to come off the surface. I want it to be a part of the bottle. And here's where you want to make sure that you start following the parameters of both sides of the bottle. So it's symmetric. So you're going to have strong symmetry to this. And again, you're noticing that I'm hitting the sides of this pretty hard. And there's that rim that goes through this part of the bottle. So that rim we're going to keep in here, and it's going to carry up. And this is where I'll show you there's a couple of pieces to the bottle, and you get too much going on and it may start to distract from it. So you want to make sure that you keep your shadows and highlights pretty consistent. So now that we've kind of got the feeling of that, we'll come back and touch up any of that stuff we want to here in a little bit. Sometimes the bottle has its own movement, and again, you're looking at things that happen around the room. So you're kind of drawing what is around the room on this bottle. So we'll let that kind of breathe, if you will. So we don't want to put too much more detail into there. This is a very important part. When you see the bottle and the designs happening, you don't want to change it up down at the bottom. You want to make sure that you have a similar activity that's going up here, down here. So you have a thin line, then you got a thicker line. So you want to kind of repeat that down below here. And another interesting thing about this bottle is that it has another bump down here at the bottom. It's almost like it's bottom weighted. And so if that is a highlight around there, you want to make sure that you kind of leave that open so that when the light hits it, it's going to feel like it's intentionally there instead of like an accidental highlight. And then the other part is you don't want to make it look too abrupt, or it'll appear that it's an actual cut line. So we're going to replicate the lines that we had up above, and this will carry the shadow through. Or let the label be right about here. And because we have that beveled bottom, we're going to let it step off the line. See, there's just a minute amount of the line coming over here. But it does go under the bottle. So we're going to continue over here. Keep this. The reflections are going straight up and down on this bottle. Not a bad thing. But when they get to the bottom of the bottle or to any other edge, there's so much more going on that you can just kind of fill it in and let the reflections do the rest. And we're going to take one more right here. Sorry for the silence. I'm just going on and kind of following the direction of the reflections. So as we keep going here, you'll notice that the bottom of the bottle is going to be darker. And we're going to let the bottom of the bottle encompass some of these highlights too, because the bottle actually bends at the bottom. It's rounded, so the shadow of the bottle itself kind of goes into that as if it's wrapping around it too. So we let that feel round down there. If you notice, that starts to feel like it's kind of carrying a look of roundness to it. So we've got a lot going on this bottle, so we're going to try to keep it simple. All right, so we've got the feel of glass. Now again, there's a whole other video on texture of the glass, texture of paper, whatever textures we're going to look for. So we'll talk about that another one. But there you can see that we've got the feeling of glass going, and because there's very hard shadows and very contrasty, it looks like glass. It feels like glass. The paper, which, you know, this in this particular instance is the label itself, is a complete different creature. It's not a surface that's going to reflect everything around it. It's a surface that's actually kind of very subdued. And as it's subdued, you want to make sure that you have a separation between it and the glass itself. So in doing that, you're going to find that, for instance, when we talked about the label up on the top, it has different bars to it. So does this one. It actually has a gold bar at the top, and when I say gold, it's a reflective gold bar. So if we want it to look like it's mimicking the top bar, then we can do it one of two ways. One way is to sketch in all of the shadows. The other way is to erase away the highlights. I like to try to sketch it in and then touch it up with eraser at the end of it, just so I can kind of keep it. consistent. Now, and this is important too, if you notice, I'm not drawing a line straight across. Like if I was drawing a label on a bottle, you know, you've got a bottle in front of you. Here we go. So you're drawing a bottle and you want to put a label on it. First of all, the bottom's not straight, sides aren't straight really. If you put a label on and you're drawing it like a square, you're looking straight at it. But if you notice, there's a curve to it because the bottle's curved. And if the bottle's curved, if you're not looking at it from a top, you're not going to see down in the top of the bottle. You're only going to see the side of the bottle. And it may look flat. So then in that case, it would be like this. However, this would be shaded and it would come to a lighter, and this would be shaded and it would come to a lighter. So then your label is going to be around like this. So you may see it beveled, so an image would be coming out. But we're going to do it as we see it here. And the way we see it is we've got a small oval, we've got a larger oval, we have, and this is interesting too, the letters for light beer are actually, it looks to be off-center because the L and the I and the T are all separate letters. They're all, L-I-T-E is all separate letters. But what happens to those letters is that the T is actually in the middle because the E is a little bit wider. The T is closer to the middle. So we're going to throw in the I and top of the T, and then the E is clear down over here. And then so we're going to take the I and we're going to take this is the dot on the I. And then we've got the I itself, which comes down. And once again, I talked briefly about typography, which that's a whole nother video too. Subscribe and you'll learn a little bit about typography secrets. And the key thing to having a successful font or calligraphy is the consistency and width of the letters. So we know that we have a T coming up here. So we're going to do the same thing here, and the bottom of that T is going to look just like the I, and it's going to have the same width to it. And then the T cross member in the T is actually level with the separation of the I and the dot in the I. So we're going to try to keep that as close to possible as possible. Every once in a while, squint your eyes and look at it and see what you're seeing. You might, you know, find yourself going in a different direction. But it's okay to stand back, look at it every once in a while, and see what you think. Because there's not any time that says, oh, you've got to continue to do this. Unless you're working under pressure for a client and it's a commissioned job, take your time, get back and look at it. And a lot of times this is great for practice, because looking at something and drawing it allows you to start to mimic things that you're going to use at another time. Like you could be drawing another thing and maybe there's a light beer bottle in the background someplace, and that light beer bottle is something that you want it to have a little bit of a legitimacy. So you're going to do everything you can to draw it relative to what it is that's in reality. So the challenge you have here is getting all this in that curve, the curve of the bottle, because it is tough. Knowing that the bottle curves around in the circle is one thing. Being able to continue the text is another. And then we're going to throw on what I think looks like Caesar Augustus leaves, but I'm sure it's hops or barley. Someone correct me on here and let me know what it is, because I know I'm probably saying it wrong. But in the middle here, there is a wheat thing, and that wheat thing is right in the middle. So you'll learn a little bit more about the bottle as you're drawing it too. I don't know, maybe this is wheat on the side here, but whatever it is, we're just indicating that it's there. We're not really drawing the detail of it, because it's not that incredibly important. The fact that you have a couple of circles, ovals actually, and you're able to give the feel that something's happening in those circles, you pretty much so cover the gamut when you do that. We have a little bit of flour down here that's kind of, again, wheat, barley, hops. Someone help me out and let me know what it is that we're looking at. Back to our Greeking statement, there is a lot of text going on here. And if you look at this, it goes up the hill and to the back. It's literally going around the bottle. It's justified left on this side, so we're going to put it like that, but we're drawing the text to look as if it's going around the bottle. And although I'm just roughing these in, you can tell that immediately you kind of feel like there's something going on there. Then on this side over here, it's the opposite. It goes around this way. So let's do some Greeking here. And we'll get that coming around the edge. This one is what's called justified or flush right. And I do believe it's following the angle of this wheat. But for whatever it is, I'm doing vertical lines, repeated vertical lines. They look like text, just a little bit like text. But now that I have the logo kind of where I want it to be, I've got a little bit of the gold stripe on in there. I'm going to go ahead and fill this in, but I'm filling it in with my lighter lead, my H lead, not the B lead, because I don't want this to jump out and stand out too much over top of the bottle itself, because the bottle, the reflective nature of the bottle is what's key. So we're going to fill this in, and be careful not to get anything too dark. Wherever your darkest part is on this logo, you're going to want the rest of the logo to be that dark. So keep that in mind as you're sketching it out, because if you did, it's going to look like it's cut into it or stuck on top of the label. This is actually printed on the label, so it's just something that has the name, and the recognition of the name is the only thing that's really significant. The rest is completely insignificant because it will replicate the logo. And when you look at it, you go, oh, I know what that is, light beer. Without really looking into it too much, you'll get the feeling that that's what it is. And when I sketch these in, you can do it as you want to, but I like to just kind of leave a lot of the scribbles around it. It sort of makes me feel that I've got the logo kind of living, if you will. And now this has a dark blue outline, and then it does say a fine Pilsner up here, so we could separate things just to, so what it might look like would be something like that. And then down at the bottom, it simply says beer. So you need enough room for beer, and you need enough room for a fine Pilsner. So we're going to sketch it. Again, this is like Greeking. It's an indication that there's something there, but instead of having, you know, dark blobs, I'm going to make letters out of that. So a fine Pilsner, and you really don't see it, but the indication is that that is a light beer label. It's faded. It's a little bit lighter than what you might want to see on a thing. No. As I come back up now, we're going to talk about this gold band around here. This gold band may have the same properties, the same reflections as what you're seeing on the bottle, just not as much because it's a printed gold. So I'm widening out the stripes and letting the highlights show through on here. So that's the gold stripe, and this is a smaller gold stripe below it. So if you look now, it's kind of got its own feel, like it might be reflecting a little bit of it. And the same thing happens at the bottom, but just not as much. So if you wanted to add a small stripe down here to the bottom, and which brings up a great point. If you notice now, I'm drawing horizontally and I'm following the bottle. My lines will follow the shape of what I believe that bottle should look like. So, and then I've got this edge here. What I want to do with that, if I take my blotting paper and I'm just going to drag off so I don't have any of those extra lines around there. Let's go ahead and get rid of this guy too. Okay. Then we're going to take off some of these extra lines. And we're going to go up in here. Let's take our 2H, take the B. Filling in the characteristics of the bottle now so that it has a darker feel to it, and I'm letting the highlights show through. So we're going to take this side down just a little bit more. Do you see? You're feeling that those extra lines now, that I'm actually filling them in, but you can still see that it's indicating that there is some sort of a cut in the glass there. I'm going to fill this in too. And there's my highlight. And we've got a little bit of a feel. And if you notice right here on these cuts, the shadow itself does change because it has the tendency to follow the contour of the bottle. And that's what helps kind of accentuate that curve in the bottle around there. And we'll go ahead and fill that in too. So now we've got a bottle going on here that's feels more like a bottle. It's got the colors of the bottle. Well, sure, feels like it does. And we're going to go take the label, the outside of the label, and we're going to add a little bit of a shadow to it as well, because although the label is white, there's still a little bit of shading going on around this. And I'm going right now vertical with the lines, but you can do it whichever way you want depending on how much. But if you notice, it starts to give the bottle depth. If you just look at it now, you can see that the bottle has depth to it because there's a darkness over here and there's a lightness on the other side. So having said that, nothing is complete without a shadow. So let's add a shadow to this and see what it does to it. And I'm thinking the light's coming from this angle here. So let's go ahead and add this shadow off this back side here. And a bottle shadow is interesting because the bottle reflects light. So there's actually a space between the shadow and the bottle that has a light mark to it. There's darkness right underneath it, but there's a light shadow right around it. And that light shadow is really so important because it lets you know that that is glass. And here's a trick about shadows too. Shadows from incandescent light get wider as they go away. If this is sunlight, it's a parallel shadow. Parallel meaning it goes exactly the shape of that bottle. But since it is let's go with a incandescent light. Here's a little trick too. Go ahead and sketch it in, sketch your shadow in. Buff that edge off. Do the same thing on the bottom side. You can buff this edge off. And it feels like a shadow. And what I like to do is I use my finger. And I just kind of stretch that shadow out. And once again, you look really close. It's lighter right here against it. It's lighter than what it is away from it. So let's go ahead and throw that in. Give it a little bit of this. And then we can take our shadow, sketch it off. Sketch some of these extra lines off. And we have ourselves a bottle. I'll give a little bit of depth to the back side of this too. Now this side I'm just going to kind of lightly hit because I really don't want to add too much of a shadow over here. I just want it to feel like it's got some depth. And characteristically speaking, if something is round, the further away it is from you, typically the darker it is, the front is lighter. And if in this case we've got a bottle that's got a lot of contrast, and then we've got some kind of images going on here that really are you know, just kind of extra peripheral images, so throw the logo in there so you got a feeling of it. This is generally a quick sketch, and it explores a couple different things. One, first of all, it explored the perspective. The oval of the bottom of the bottle, it changes in the center and it changes at the top. It's minutely different in this particular drawing, but as you remember those drawings in the beginning that we did here, if you're looking at it from the top, there's going to be a larger opening and then it's smaller at the bottom, and then vice versa if you're looking at it from underneath. So that explores the perspective. Now, secondly, we talked about texture. This is glass. So the glass, I've kind of made it a little bit softer just to show the point, but glass is very, very hard in shadows. So there's rarely too many shades of gray in there. It should be hard blacks and hard whites. And that helps the bottle to look like it's got depth. So if we're to fill some of these things in, you might feel like, okay, that's got a little bit more of the feeling that it's a dark bottle, and which is okay. You can change all those up you want, and you can come back in with an eraser if you want and take care of some of those highlights and get rid of some of them if you want. But the reflective nature of glass is what it is. It reflects whatever's around it. So since there's a lot of linear things in here, you're seeing a lot of linear reflection. And then finally, it's the shading. The shading is when something goes away from the front. Think of it as darker when it goes away and lighter and brighter as it comes closer to the front. And then you kind of use that in your advantage to show where the shadow might be. And you got yourself a drawing of a glass bottle. Regardless of what the label is, at least you can see that the glass bottle itself is there in front of you. And let's go ahead and add some depth to the side of this label too. All right, so, you know, maybe not perfect. There's so many ways to go about drawing this, like I said earlier, from reference, which is either photographs or other images or live items. And if you have a photograph and you want to really get it accurate, take the photograph and project it onto your paper and do a quick outline. That way you're sure to get the steps right. That's another video which I'll show you, which is very, very simple way to get the structure of something, and then you go into the final details. So I hope this has been helpful, and I hope that you do learn as much as I hope that is possible to learn on a quick sketch thing. But this is just one of the many lessons. I implore you, if you would, subscribe to Ohio Jimbo, and you'll see a lot more. And if you see a particular study that you want to see, or if you know of one that you want to see, let me know. Just tell me if there's something you want to try to work on. I'll do all I can to help and guide with the teachings that I've had, and over the past, oh my goodness, 35 years of drawing, illustrating, and doing murals and of course creative advertising. This is one of the funnest things I can do. So let me know if I can help in any way, shape, or form. And for now, here you go. That's the bottle, the final drawing of the bottle. I know there's a bunch of different angles of it, but this is the best way for me to show it to you. So there it is, straight up.